Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Talking God and Politics with Mark, Mike, and my beautiful wife, the eye candy of the show, Denise. And tonight we have a special guest, Mr. Eric Rice. Eric, how are you doing, sir?
Doing great. How about you guys?
We're
Great.
doing good.
Doing well.
So
Doing
let
well.
me give everyone kind of some backstory. So my wife listens to Eric Rice, and he has the show, The Rice Report podcast. And how long you been listening to this show?
I think I've been following you since 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years.
And you're still alive? Wow. You're not bored to sleep yet? Okay.
No. I started following you. You had a lot of, I thought, balanced and fair things with the whole Q thing, right? When Trump and all of that was going on. And so I appreciated your input, and I liked you, and I liked Brian Cates, right? So those you two are pretty much the two that I follow, that and Laura Abilene, which you and I follow Laura Abilene a lot.
She's great.
Yeah, she's awesome. And then I started noticing sort of an evolution in what you were talking about. And over the last, 2 years, more about Israel coming out and really questioning this narrative that we have been given about Israel. And I was like, you are asking really good questions that my husband can answer. And he has a book that you need to read. And so that's how I reached out to you.
I remember like it was yesterday. Yeah.
Yes. So, and then I got the two of you connected through that book. And
there you go. That show that we did was epic, man. I mean, that was 2.5 hours, I think.
It felt like 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, we were just going off of each other. That was excellent. That was a great show.
And I've got so much feedback from that show, Mike. Like, I literally have a guy who's in my men's ministry on Wednesdays. He had some schedule changes, so he went to a different group, and he's just helping with the youth on Wednesday night at the church. He sent me a text the other day, and he's like, I think I'm starting to understand what you've been saying. Do you have any information for me? And I just sent him the link to that episode, and half an hour in, he just sent me, wow. You guys are really tying this together for me. You did such a good job on that show. I want to thank you again for that. It was fantastic. I've sent that. It's my number one. I think it's my number one video on Rumble by far, and it should be. I mean, Rumble is a tough platform. Right. It was on YouTube for 28 minutes, by the way.
So that is funny that you said that, because before we set this up, I'm looking for that, and Mike's telling me, yeah, we go for like 2 hours, and I had a trip this past weekend, and I thought, well, you know what, I'll listen to it on the trip. I couldn't find it, and of course I didn't even think Rumble, but I'm thinking, okay, what they talked about, if I find this on YouTube, that's going to be very surprising. So
yeah, 28 minutes is all it lasted. That's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why this show that we do here, now Mike says he puts it on his channel on YouTube, and I said, well, have any episodes been dropped yet? Not yet. So, but I put
I'm not a big
Talking
fish.
God and Politics on Rumble. So
neither am I. I'm a tiny fish. I'm a very small fish.
Well, I was going to say,
small fish is a minnow. So,
but I've gotten a strike from YouTube so far. So we'll see. I try one videos on there.
You realize, guys, that should be a badge of honor.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna re-upload that episode this week and just see what happens. I'm gonna change the title. So even I did a World War II revisionist approach. Kind of.
Nice.
Going through Europa, the final battle, putting it off on them, right? Even though that information has been known for 20 years. And that video is still up there because it has a different title that doesn't say anything about World War II or Europa. So I'm going to try it again to get it on YouTube. I don't know how long. I have like 15 strikes from YouTube. I have a ton of them, like 4 or 5 suspensions. And I called a friend of mine at YouTube, and like, it's kind of weird. You can watch. Like, all my business partners and I laugh because if it's I have a lot of episodes. I try not to be controversial. I just try to be honest. And some episodes, the honesty is controversial, and you can see them. Like when I put up an episode, maybe like a month ago, it hit 1,100 views in about 7 or 8 hours. And I went to bed and I woke up and I had 212 views. So this happens all the last night. I refreshed the episode with Christine, which is not controversial at all. Even then, I was at like 290 something, and it dropped down to like 212 when I woke up this morning, and it's climbing back up. So I don't know what's happening. I don't make any money doing this stuff. I do it simply because I'd love to share the truth and have good conversations, and people love to hear good conversations.
Mhm.
Well, Eric, that segues into maybe you can kind of give folks an introduction to yourself. And I would like you to kind of focus on, because I don't know this about you. How did you get into podcasting? How did the Lord kind of draw you in? And is your wife pretty supportive of all this? And how does all that come together?
Well, geez, that's a difficult story. A pretty simple story. I never wanted to be involved in any of this stuff ever. When all the 2020 hit,
Mhm.
I was in quantum biology at the time, so we had a lab and we had all this other stuff, and we had police coming to our door, telling us to wear masks. I'm like, this is a lab, guys. This is a scientific lab. We make products here. We actually have a sterilization or sanitization tunnel. You walk through, you get sanitized, kills every virus on your skin. And I just started seeing what's happened in the country. I was living in a coma like everyone else. I've been sort of awake since about 2008, because in 2009, I got a Google alert about some of the changes of war crimes from World War II, which shocked me and it got me into that. I've always been into the World War II narrative. It's just something that my grandfather. I had two grandfathers. One of them served in World War II, one of them didn't. The one who didn't kept telling me greatest generation, we won the war. And I was like a junior in high school or something. And we had a class and on World War II. And our teacher got to the end and I said, well, how can you say that we won World War II? We didn't gain any land. Soviet Union gained land. Israel was created, but America got nothing. We just have a bunch of dead people. That's all we got from this war. And it sparked that off. So I've always been kind of, I've questioned a lot of things most of my life, but for politics, I mean, I didn't even vote in 2016. I could not have cared less about politics in my life. I will say this: you can look, and I've never voted Democrat in my life, because about 2000, must have been 2006, maybe 2007. I'm in Chicago. A senator's walking down the street, and his name was Barack Obama. I owned a little parking lot for the Cubs games, and somebody said, "You want to meet him?" And I looked at him. I said, "No, I'm not interested." One of the more pertinent God winks in my life. So I'm kind of glad I didn't meet him. But that was kind of like the limit of politics. I was managing money and stuff like that, so I had to understand the political flow and if who was in office and what it meant to the markets. But I never really, in my personal life, I was a mess. I didn't have faith. I've always believed in God. I just found Jesus in like 2021. More importantly, I would say He found me.
There you go.
I was very much, I'm still very much against formalized churches because they're teaching us propaganda. You can go to 6 different churches about the same verse, and you're going to have 6 different stories, and 5 of them are going to be pro-Israel, which is,
well said.
It's just kind of how it is. And, that topic burned on my heart, like you said, about 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, I started coming into my own of a deeper understanding of what we're in. So 2020, I'm going along the flow with everyone else, run a small little public company, and COVID hits, and 90% of our revenue is wiped out overnight. We were selling natural products to doctors in California. No doctor's office was open. My father had kidney cancer. He needed a surgery. We couldn't get a surgery. I'll kind of keep the story as short as I can. A lot of things happened in our lives where we started to wake up. So now I'm running this company by myself, that normally has 50 people in a building. I'm by myself all day. There's no business to be had. So I just started reading, started digging around, started seeing things, came into all these other things, started looking at everything. And when you really look at all pieces of a puzzle, you start to realize that it's not just one set of pieces that fill the puzzle. Like each side of every story has truth in it. And if you can pull those together and formalize what you think to be true that you can prove, you find yourself a little happier. So I was in 2020, one of those guys that moved from California to Texas, packed up everything. I gave away. I didn't even sell off my shares in my own company, raised some capital for the company, got burned on that later. Moved out to Texas and started working with First and Second Amendment groups and patriot groups and in the real world, like meeting people in the real world. Mm-hmm. And eventually I started, I was on Twitter for a bit. I never got suspended on Twitter. I'll make that clear, because I stopped posting. I just stopped caring. I started looking at all, there was so much stuff, so many barrages of information coming at me. And most of it I'd heard of. I wouldn't say I had a deep understanding of. So I was learning, kind of following along and seeing what was happening. Then I went on Parler, if you guys remember Parler. And that became just a crap show of all of like epic proportions, like really quick. And then you know, in the middle of 2021, everyone's fallen for psyops, myself included, because there were so many of them. There's actually more today than there ever have been, by the way. And then I started working with some guys in counter-terrorist studies and how to help protect our borders from Islam and all this other stuff. And then I start to realize that all the guys teach me about the Islamic danger to this country. We're all very supportive of Israel. And the then you start, group. The funding source of all terrorist groups, right? So there is one terrorist state, and that's pretty obvious at this point if you have eyes to see, ears to hear. And in the middle of all this, I started thinking to myself, like, gosh, I just gave away all of everything I worked for my whole life. I'm starting over, and as I start to make a little money, I want to be able to protect it. So I started getting really into figuring out the financial system, which I'd known the financial system. I've been in it since I was 22. So I understood what the markets were and how they worked. But then you start getting really deep into central banking. I read Creature from Jekyll Island in like 2014. So knew all that stuff and started to see the real rigorous clause of tyranny being imposed upon us. Right. So I still remember through Trump's first administration, just thinking everything I've heard about this guy is a lie. You know, everything. So I didn't watch the news back then. And if I did, I was mainstream media news. And I started realizing, wow, if they're going to lie about this, you know, what else will happen? I still remember in COVID, the chlorine dioxide comment, which actually does work against COVID. And I know this because I was submitting a therapeutic trial to the FDA, which they told me after the third failed attempt on their behalf that they were only interested in vaccines, which is a clear violation of you know, the Nuremberg Code.
Yeah. So Tucker actually just interviewed. I don't know if you follow Tucker at all.
I do.
He did a great interview with a guy that has found a cure for most cancers, and he had it, and it also applied to the COVID virus. Yes. And because he didn't call it a vaccine, he couldn't get it approved. And then once the Biden administration came in, they totally shut him down. But yeah, it's interesting you said that, because if you would have called it a vaccine, it probably would have seen the light of day.
I mean, one of the more interesting things is this trial we submitted was actually made with nanoparticles of blue scorpion venom, which have been proven to defeat cancer. And I still remember, I forgot who it was, but Stu Peters and some other guy came out with COVID was caused by, you know, snake venom. And I'm like, guys, I've been working in labs with venom for 2 years. Like you need metric tons of venom to pollute water source. So good theory, but in practice didn't work out. So I was silent. I was kind of the guy just following along, clicking like, reposting stuff. And then I went to Telegram, and Telegram had all these, you know, live chats, and I would hear stuff in live chats, and eventually just, you know, some things were like, wow, that's really cool. Teach me more about that, or where can I learn more? And then you start hearing theories of people who don't have any experience with what they were talking about, where I did. So I just started speaking up and trying to say, okay, I know you guys think that the theory is this, but this is how that process works in real life. I know it because I've done it. And, you know, just trying to help people find that level common ground, because we were really diverging, right? It was like you either believed in this huge theory that was beautiful, or you're doom and gloom and the world is screwed forever. And I wanted to stay in the middle. And I still want to stay in the middle, because I'm still not certain as to which way we're going. Only God knows that. The rest of it is just conjecture and belief. So I started getting heavy into faith, and after a while of doing some live chats with other people, some people were not great people. Some people were great people and stuck together with some of them. But then a lot of people started asking me to start my own page on Telegram, so I did. And halfway through that first month, I had been talking to some other people on chats like, hey, the Muslims pray at noon. Why don't we pray at noon? Right? Like that seems to be spiritual warfare 101 to me. Like if they're going to fire shots, we fire back. And so I started a prayer group. I remember that first day walking into my spare bedroom, my wife going, where are you going? I said, I'm going to go do a prayer group. I'm going to do a live public prayer. I've never done this before. It's going to be terrible. Don't worry. No one's going to be on it. And I logged in, and back then Telegram was really active. I mean, it was a really active network. Now it's pretty dead. But there was like 180 people that clicked on within a minute. And I was like, oh crap. Now I actually have to do this. and I promised I would record it. So I started doing Patriot Prayer, which I've been doing for 4 years now. So I've been live right now, starting my own business. It's a little choppy, but pretty much Monday through Friday, every day between noon and 1, I've been doing live prayer. And I hope that that's my contribution. Everything else, you know, we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. And so I started getting into understanding, well, if we're going into tyranny, which I still think is actually happening, I don't think that Trump can actually stop financial tyranny because the banks make those decisions. And we're just calling a CBDC a stablecoin now, right? So it's a whole new rebrand of the same old story. It'll be, instead of government controlled money, it'll be corporate controlled money. So, which is worse, to be honest, because if you knew what I knew about corporate money and how they've tried to have their hooks in nation state capital for 500 years, you would understand.
Yeah, anybody that tells you that we're living in a capitalistic society is lying to you, because it's not. It's
well, they were
corporate
lying to you from the
capitalism.
beginning. The term capitalism and communism both come from communists. Like they created the term capitalism. We should be trying to live in a free market system. Like that's what really we should be going for. And free markets require self-regulation, not government oversight.
That's correct.
And being another Austrian economist, that free market word is very, very important. So I started looking into it, and I'm saying, gosh, I mean, where else do you go with money, right? So gold and silver are decentralized, right? You can own it, you can hold it. It's a bearer asset. And so I started buying a bunch of gold and silver. And as I go through this, I had friends of mine calling me, just going, you need to start promoting Bitcoin. This is, I said, I'm not promoting Bitcoin. It's a scam. And I've thought it was a scam since 2012, 2010. I mean, I was living in LA when Bitcoin came out. So all the people were coming, you got to buy this. It's $1. I'm like, I can go get a Snickers bar. At least I can eat the Snickers bar. So I started
all of the gold bugs, Peter Schiff, guys like that. In fact, I talked to Peter Schiff and I was like, what do you think of this Bitcoin? He talked me out of buying it back in 2000. I guess it was around 2017.
Yeah.
Because I was a gold bug, big into silver, trading on margin. I was, it was great. And yeah, he talked me out of it.
I would have too in 2017. I actually did.
Gary North did too, and I regret it till this day because I came that close, and well, $800.
The good news is that a lot of gold bugs right now, like I won't give you names, but like I have an energy arbitrage company. We do private equity to find really cheap energy, and an easy way to monetize cheap energy is Bitcoin mining. So we're in the Bitcoin mining space, AI, high compute. We're the energy guys. What I can tell you is another business that we do is corporate treasury management. And we are talking with two very large gold companies right now that are working on building their own Bitcoin stockpile. Mm-hmm. So there's this synergy between gold bugs and Bitcoiners because they're simple processes to understand with tremendous amounts of value. And
yeah, that's good. I think Peter Schiff, I think behind the scenes, he has come around to it. It's just his ego will not let him admit that in public, is what I think.
Well, Peter Schiff gets a lot of clicks on his posts and his writing by hating Bitcoin. Right. His son is a huge Bitcoiner. His wife owns Bitcoin. There's no way he doesn't own Bitcoin. Right. Same as Jamie Dimon, who's been telling you not to have that. They all own Bitcoin. That was the one thing I realized when I started meeting people in the network. Who are tremendously connected. It's kind of like,
Mike, it's kind of like Gary DeMar saying that he's not a full preterist. We know he is. He's just not going to admit it publicly. Right?
Well, I'll admit publicly, I don't care about the golden age or Jesus's return. I'm part of the welcoming committee or the the planning committee and all that kind of stuff. Mike and I talked about that. I'm like, I can certainly see the point of preterism where you could definitely quantify that Jesus has already been here. But that's not my purpose of faith is not to predict the future. My purpose of faith is relationship. And that's the only thing I look to when it comes to biblical nature and spirituality is just how can God use me in any way possible to help other people's lives. And, so I look at, I'm very interested in the preterist ideas because they're actually fairly grounded. But they contradict, just like everything else. There's contradictions in every interpretation of the Bible. I think one thing that's clear, Mike and I did on an episode, that Christian Zionism is an oxymoron. That's the one thing that I can see that is absolutely clear. But yeah, so Mike, I got into this thing because other people wanted me to. And then I'm just a man of obligation. So I kept with it for a while. It gets very tiresome doing, research on social media all day, trying to read every article, understand everything. I went to oil and gas and I had a full-time executive job there that I walked away from to start this company. I just needed to focus on my own life. So I decided that I'm not going to do these live chats on Telegram. I was doing them almost every night. So I do a prayer during the day, a 2-hour chat at night, every night while I was working a full-time job for about a $400 million company. Just got to be too much. So I went into podcasting so I could just, take my own time with it. And I don't do live stuff like this. I do lives when it's just me, but when I have an interview, I'll record it in case the person I'm interviewing wants to delete something, which hasn't happened yet. Actually, I haven't had to edit a single interview that I've done so far.
Nice.
And now I do it because it's just a passion of mine. My wife's very supportive, you know, so I'm not doing this like I was in 2021 without a job. I'm doing this while I'm earning money, so it's okay for the family.
Right.
And it's good because my kids watch it. So I don't curse. I don't do any of that stuff because I want my kids to see an example. And more, I hear more and more people. I don't have very many views that YouTube shows, and Rumble's the same. But the audience that I have is very small and very impactful. So I know some of the people that watch my show, and they are worth a ton of money. And I know some people who watch my show who have no money, who have big influence and who have big hearts and want to make the world better. So for me, podcasting is definitely not a career. It's a hobby. I don't have another hobby. So like most people put together model trains or something, I don't have one. So I try to just, get online and talk with folks about what's happening in the world and try to make sense of it and take in everything. Like I love I'm a conspiracy theorist, right? Which means that I'm a realist now, but there's still some wild hair theories out there. And I love listening to them. Do I believe them? Some of it. But I also like listening to the counterpoints and saying, well, I can prove this. That's still conjecture, but there's so much circumstantial evidence around it. Like I kind of think like a lawyer. Could you make a case in court for this theory to be real? And when
you should come to a preterist conference outside of talking about the Bible. They've got some crazy stuff that we talk about. So
well, there's quite a few of you guys, because most of you are libertarians, and there's quite a few of you guys that go to Bitcoin conferences, which I had never attended until 2024. And all I had heard from other crypto people was that Bitcoin conferences were boring. I had so many incredible conversations about really wild conspiracy theories, and almost everyone there was talking about God at the end of the day. Like sound money creates some sort of peace in your life, some sort of stability where like I don't have to, one of the issues we have as human beings is we make money that deflates every minute. And it makes us gamblers, which is contradictory to the Bible. We've got to gamble on stocks. We've got to gamble on these other things. And we're constantly caught up in that fret. Whereas most Bitcoiners you meet are like, well, I have a savings technology and I put my money in there. And yeah, it goes up and down quite a bit. But if I'm not holding it for tomorrow, I'm holding it for 10 years from now. And the numbers have been pretty stellar. I think the numbers are going to get even wilder in the future. Because I think we're going to see 95 to 99% of the rest of crypto fade away in the next 12 months.
It's interesting you said that because when I got into the space and just really dove in with X and trying to find people to follow and talk to and getting on all these threads, the biggest thing that occurred to me is most of them were Christian.
Yeah.
And that's what I was surprised about, because I'm thinking, degens, gamblers, it's really not. It's people that love the truth. Yes, libertarian leaning big time. Some libertarians, but definitely libertarian leaning, and they just want to, they see the truth. They know that the fiat system is a lie. But yeah, it was surprising to see how many Christians are in these in this ecosystem and in these circles.
Yeah, one of the things that shocked me too. I thought the same thing. So like, I've had crypto people in my life since crypto started. I was just I'm very old fashioned. And one of the things that I'm old fashioned in virtues, but I'm very high tech. Like I love technology. I love the quantum space. I love what's coming. Being in the energy space, we see all these new projects before most people do. They're just looking for a place that'll power it. And it is fascinating. The deeper you get, and I've been in all the communities. So I before I became a Bitcoiner, I got into other altcoins and followed their communities, and I found that all of them are lunatics.
Well, now I will say one, Cardano is probably second to Bitcoin as one of the most decentralized coins. Now they're not digital gold, obviously, but I think they're that's where I got into crypto. It wasn't actually Bitcoin. After Peter Schiff and Dr. North shut me down, I let it go until 2021, and Cardano and ADA was where I went to because of the decentralization factor. So yes, I agree with you. And most of them are, they're owned by VCs. They're goofy companies that people are just kind of creating tokens to make money on. I think Cardano is one that's going to be surprising to everybody coming into this Web3 technology. They're already partnering with, building out the layer 2 for Bitcoin. They're partnering with them. Anyway.
It's their smartest move. There's a reason why it's called Bitcoin and altcoins. Like they're alternatives to Bitcoin. And many of them, the way I look at them is, I was part of the software boom in California when software became, SaaS became a model, and you were building out software and selling software as a service to people. That's what most Web3 projects remind me of. Their native currencies are unimportant. Their blockchain technologies are extremely important, I think. So, a lot of people,
most of the time they don't need a coin. It's like all these Web3 game companies. You don't need a coin. I think that's why Coinbase with Base was the smartest thing they did. They didn't create a coin. They just said, look, we're going to leverage Ethereum as layer 1. And you're right. Most of them, you don't need a coin. Just go build the technology.
Yeah, and I want to make it as useful for your listeners as possible about Bitcoin. I am very knowledgeable about crypto. I started out, I got my first Bitcoin for I helped a guy make a presentation deck in 2013, and he couldn't pay me. And I actually didn't care. I was like, listen, your friend of mine will do it. And he gave me 5 Bitcoin on a cold wallet that I just lost. So I just lost like $500,000 years ago. And there's about 4 million of them out there that have been lost. So, but I've been stacking since 16,800 was really when I entered the space on my own. And I pumped 2 years of bonuses and salary into it. So built up a good reserve for myself. But there is a very big distinct difference between Bitcoin and altcoins. And altcoins won't admit that, and Bitcoiners talk about it too much, to be honest with you. So you have a lot of tribalism. As far as my crypto allocation, my digital asset allocation, I am not, from the maxi perspective. Your Bitcoin maxi is someone who has enough cash in the bank to pay their bills. They might own a car, and they probably live in an apartment, but everything else is in Bitcoin. That's really what I consider to be a maxi. I am what you'd call Bitcoin only. So I have gold, silver, which I love. I actually just sold some gold at a big profit on Friday, and it made me want to buy more Bitcoin because you got to drive around with a pistol to go to a place with other guys with other pistols and walk out. I asked for a check so I could put it right in the bank instead of cash. But you run a lot of risk with gold and silver, whereas Bitcoin, I could just push a button and it'd be deposited in my bank account if I needed it. But there's a huge difference. So the first thing to understand is that Bitcoin, there's ghost stories about everything. There's lies about everything. There's truth about everything as well. One of the things you'll hear is that Bitcoin is outdated and that it's slow and it's clunky. Is it slow and clunky on layer 1? Absolutely. And that's by design. But I'll explain the difference between the two. So Bitcoin, when it emerged in a way that we've never seen before, right? So an anonymous person worked with well-known developers who are well documented, and they created a system which was like the 38th attempt at creating digital money. So Bitcoin wasn't the first Bitcoin; it was the first Bitcoin that worked. That was really the key that happened. And their entire
Bitcash, I think, wasn't it? Bitcash was the first one. Was it Bitcash?
BitGold, eCash,
Digital Cash, anyway, something like that. Yeah,
eCash,
early 2000, eCash, that was it.
BitGold. There were a lot of them that attempted before. And cryptography has been being worked on, since the 70s. And the cypherpunk movement began in really the late 70s, early 80s. So before I even knew what a computer was, people were working on this project. And they were doing it in coordination with one another. Even Donald Trump said in Nashville 2024 that Bitcoin is a marvel of human cooperation and achievement. And that was what really drew me to Bitcoin. So when I said, I remember it was like late 2021, early 2022, I have like 10 of my friends beating on my door going, you got to get into Bitcoin. You got to get into XRP. You got to get into Ethereum. You got to get into all these things. And I'm like, guys, they all sound like the same thing to me. So I took a deep dive on the cornerstone. I took a deep dive on Bitcoin. And I can tell you pretty much, I'm not really a big Cardano guy. I definitely think there's some future there. I'm not a huge fan of Hoskinson. I'm not a huge fan of anything claiming to be centralized that has a human figurehead that can have influence on the other people who validate a network. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, well, he's recently given that up. They went with, he stepped down. They've created the decentralized network. He still is the talking head for it, absolutely. And I like him. He's a true libertarian. So we come stick together.
Is he? I remember him being on stage at a conference saying that, when people ask me, what do I do for a living? I print money. That's what he said. I print money. So I started looking into this printing money thing, right? Which is really the harbor of all evil today. So if you have a central bank that can just print money out of thin air, they can do anything they want because they never run out of capital. Now, crypto came after Bitcoin was created. You have a blockchain, and I'm just going to assume most people know what a blockchain is by now. And you have blockchains and you have native currencies. So you have this native currency called Bitcoin that's on top of the Bitcoin network. The entire premise of the network was to be fully decentralized, meaning that anyone can be involved for a very small investment or a very small contribution. You can do one of three things. You can either buy and sell the native currency, which is what most people do. You can run a node. A node is kind of like a governor. It's your voting right on the system. It gives you the ability to vote on changes that are proposed by the network by totally decentralized developers throughout the world. And then you have miners who are validating transactions and getting rewards from the system. So these three distinct categories of people create what every libertarian and every Austrian economist has ever wanted: money without any involvement of the state or corporatocracy. So people often leave out corporatocracy. That is also a huge involvement. People don't realize the United States is actually not run by the government. The United States is run by oligarchies that have massive influence and have tons of money that they printed out of thin air to throw at politicians to get deals done. And this is happening. It's not just BlackRock. The crypto guys have actually spent more on lobbying in the last 2 years than any other branch of the private sector.
Well, Coinbase definitely. What you're saying, I absolutely see that. I think a lot of them have had to.
Your boy Charles has been pumping money out there too, man.
They've been. Well, look, he's a billionaire. He is. Yes, I've got a affinity for him. Absolutely, I overlook certain things. Absolutely. I just think his. Cool. Yeah, I think Cardano, what he set up to do 10 years ago, which they haven't fully even finished the full plan, partnering with Bitcoin, doing the Lightning Network, making transactions with Bitcoin faster. I think, Cardano stepping in there, and Cardano is decentralized. I mean, the majority of the coins are not they're owned by, I think only 8% are owned by the whales. That means, 6%. So you've got 94% owned by everybody else. But yes, absolutely, you can't.
Where did all those coins come from, though?
Well, yeah, I mean,
they were printed out of thin air, just like Charles says in his interview. They just pushed a button and they created all. That's right.
But so let me ask you this: so you're saying that he can go back and do it, even though the max supply has been done? I think there's only about 2% left that need to be released.
You're missing the point. You're missing the point. Yeah, absolutely. In a very precarious way, yes, all of these networks that have low validator counts that are run by human beings can be influenced by other human beings to make changes, including Bitcoin. The difference being that no one earned a Cardano. No one had to do anything to get it. No one. And it's the same with every other altcoin. And it's not to say there's no purpose. Like there are people who need an idol to follow. Like it's just human nature. There are people who need an idol to follow, which is what I love about the Bitcoin story, that, you have Satoshi, who people say he created it. It's not him. It's Hal Finney, Adam Back, Craig Wright. All these other guys were the developers who executed it. And
a great book, by the way, called Digital Gold. I'm sure you've read it.
Yeah, it's good.
But I'll just put that out there. There's a great book about all of this called Digital Gold. It's really good.
Yeah.
Gives you the history of this.
Well, as I start breaking it down and I'm going through my thesis on Bitcoin, which I did a great episode with a guy named G Money, who's an interesting guy. He's a big Q guy, but he has a great thesis on how he became a Bitcoiner. For me, as a gold and silver guy, I started looking and saying, well, crypto's inevitable at this point in time. It's inevitable. Like we're going there. And I want to own the asset with the most value. So if I looked at all other commodities, because Bitcoin has been called a commodity legally since 2014, all other commodities, I cannot find a single valuable commodity that isn't mined. Like the word mining was very important, calling it mining, right? So Bitcoin miners, if you guys don't know how they work, it's very interesting. So it's all an energy play. So you have a native currency, you have a blockchain, you have buyers and sellers, and then you have node runners who are the governors. But you have this mining network of people that are using high-powered compute, which is the wave of the future, and it kind of started with Bitcoin mining. But the way the system works, I'll break it down very easily. So around every 10 minutes, that's not the number, it's the block size that matters. Around every 10 minutes, a new block is created. That's way faster than Swift, way slower than other crypto. Okay, so I'll make that very clear so the crypto bros aren't like claiming that I'm not saying Bitcoin's base layer is slow. It is. And that's by design, because it's designed to be perfect. The settlement layer, layer 1 of Bitcoin, is perfectly decentralized. You can't make that claim anywhere else because nothing's been mined. There's no contribution to the network beyond a few code writers. And those are usually selected by the foundations, which are owned by the corporations of the other altcoin. So yes, there is human influence. And that needs to be acknowledged. Notice I'm not angry.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say,
Yeah, I'm not angry. Like I hate the Bitcoiners who just scream and, oh, it's centralized garbage. They're great software plays. Like, so I'm very much in the middle of the road. My money I'm putting in Bitcoin. You can do whatever you want with yours. And that's the attitude we should all have. That's what the American attitude is, right? You do what you want. I'm going to do what I want. And I'm going to give you my thesis as to why I do what I do. So here's what miners do. Every 10 minutes, there's a new block that comes up on the Bitcoin network. Think of that like a packaging box at an assembly line in a factory. Okay, so this packaging box, this big brown box, is being filled with transactions on the network. And me as a miner, I'm trying to solve a password so that I can get that block, validate the transactions, and get paid. So what I have to have is computing units that make 200 to 300 million guesses per second at a very complex mathematical problem. And I'm competing with millions and millions of other miners throughout the world. And eventually one of us solves that password. I just kind of think of it as a password, right? It's an easy way to do it. So I've solved it. The box comes to me. I validate all the transactions. I make sure there's no double spend. There's no counterfeit Bitcoin, that everything looks on the up and up. It then goes to all the node holders throughout the world, not just the country or the corporation or the foundation, the whole world. I run a node in my home and I run a self miner in my home. So I have both of these things in my house. When that happens and the node holders say, yep, those transactions are valid, that actually is a double seal of approval. Go ahead and put it on the blockchain. And then Bitcoin pays me 3.125 Bitcoin. Now, this is what it's called proof of work. And this is why I love proof of work. Because in order to actually get Bitcoin, every single person, including Satoshi, had to do this process. I have to buy computers. I have to use electricity. I have to configure my miners to run properly. I have to be energy efficient to be profitable. I'm creating utility for the rest of the world by contributing to this network. This is what every American who understands what's happening right now wants, but doesn't know what it means. We want we the people to be in charge of the financial sector and not a government or an overlord or a politician claiming to have no power in the system, which they all do. They all do. Every foundation has a head of the foundation. Every foundation is paid for by a crypto corporation who has a CEO, a venture capitalist investor, and a board of directors. All of those people are, regardless of whether they want to admit it or not, massively influential about the future of that crypto policy. Whether it's to make more, burn some, make changes to transactions. There's a million things. There's human interaction. The problem with money for all the existence of time has always been centralization and human influence. Well, in Bitcoin, it's influenced by mathematics, thermodynamics, and physics. The code that was written into it is the innovation, not its transaction speed or its ability to do dolphin flips in the middle of the ocean and launch meme coins on the blink of an eye. That was not the purpose.
That's coming. That's coming.
Not to Bitcoin. It will never come to Bitcoin because it's a serious project, right? Like it's $2 trillion. It's a serious project. Actually adding anything to it is irrelevant. The world needs a sound money procedure. Now, what got me more interested in this is the hash rate. So every time my computer, my mining units in Tennessee or in my home, every time that they're guessing on that Bitcoin block, that's called a hash. Right now, that network is hashing 935 exahash per second. To give you an idea what that means, if you combined every American, Russian, and Chinese major tech company, if you combine them all and you turn them into just Bitcoin miners, they would be able to equal about 4.5% of that total hash rate. That's how powerful 900 exahash of power is. Also, to operate 900 exahash, which we're pretty regularly between 700 and 800 exahash. When you're at that 800, 900 level, at 800 exahash, it requires 29.4 gigawatts of energy to produce that amount of hash power. That's how much competition is. Now Bitcoin mining is different. There's home miners, which I advise everyone. If you hate Bitcoin and you don't want Bitcoin, you want to have money. So if you want to get Bitcoin to sell it and you want to understand how it works, buy a solo Satoshi, a little tiny $180 machine you can put in your house. It mines Bitcoin. You're probably never going to mine any Bitcoin, but at least you're going to understand. Now, probably never, but I will say 6 solo miners have hit full blocks in the last year. That's 6 people who came home from going to church and they had $300,000 sitting in their
one of them actually, what was it, last week or the week 2 weeks ago?
There's one yesterday.
Hit one. Or was it? Okay. Well, I guess it was last week is what I heard. Yeah.
And they'll become more prevalent because that one of the issues. So there's no one can argue that Bitcoin is decentralized, right? So even because it's never been pre-mined. Like I hate the word pre-mined. Just say printed. Just say fiat, right? It's the same thing. Pre-mined means we created out of thin air. No Bitcoin has ever been pre-mined. It's all been earned. I have to actually invest to get Bitcoin if I don't want to buy it on the open market. I have to actually earn it through the system. It's what we all want. It's called a meritocracy. Everything else is a bureaucracy.
And also it's limited. It's what is it going to be? 20? When is the final one going to be mined? Is it
in the year 2140? So we'll all be dead by then. So we'll all be dead by the time the last Bitcoin is mined. And there aren't actually 21 million. It's 20,999,999. So just short of 21 million.
Yeah.
And that's all that's allowed because it's in the code. It's kind of like, by the way, since we're on a religious podcast, look into the Bitcoin code. One of the things, I love the mathematics. I'll get through the mathematics. So to me, looking at an environment where I have to earn something to make money, I'm in. If it's, I've been invited to invest as a VC in all kinds of meme coins and utility coins and all these other tokens and all these other things. I never understood it, so I stayed away from it.
You didn't buy Trump or Melania token?
I think it's the biggest offense to the entire society, to be honest with you. I think
those 2 coins crashed the market.
Well, yeah, they're all the same. That if someone else makes it, here's how altcoins work, and any altcoiner is more than welcome to come on my podcast and talk about this, and I won't get angry and I won't yell at you.
I'm going to call Charles. We're coming on.
I'd love to have him on.
Charles on.
Love to have him on. But here's the basics of.
By the time we're done, you're going to be a proof of stake guy without question.
Never going to happen. It's just central banking 101. He with the most money makes the most money in proof of stake. That's like there's no arguing around that. But if you look at altcoins,
get him first.
Yeah. Well,
you're going to have to pry him out of my cold dead hand first.
Listen, I support anyone. Like you put your money where you want to put your money, and I'm going to support you. I'm not going to hate on you because you don't own the same crypto I own. I think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world.
I see him fight all the time. It's insane.
Well, when they actually pump, I'm like one of the only people. I'm like, congratulations. I'm not going to own what you own, but I'm super happy for you that you made money. Now, I know most of the time that's done through wash trading and social media marketing, but that's just, I'm still happy for you. I'm happy people made money. That's just a fact. Like I can prove that. You can even use AI to find that out. So yeah, going back to the technology of the piece, then I'll go into like the kind of the codification and where it became more of a clear path for me. Cause I don't want to, I could have invested in all kinds of things with my network and where I come from and all this other stuff that are really bad for society. And I'm really glad I never did. And at this age in life, and I'm doing pretty well, I don't need to take a risk into something I don't believe in, which is why I started my podcast on money, politics, and religion. Think of a triangle. So if I'm going to invest money in something, it has to match my politics and my religion. If I'm going to vote for something, it has to be good for my money and for my politics or my religion. And if I'm going to invest time in religion, it better align with my politics and my money, right? So if you look at life in that triangle perspective, you get a better idea. And that's what led me to Bitcoin. So is it slower on transactions? Certainly. But Hal Finney in 2010 said layer 2 of, this is 2010, said layer 2 of Bitcoin, which is now most widely considered the Lightning Network, although there are multiple applications. I've met with a Lightning Labs team. They can process 4 million transactions a second. I use Lightning at least 3 times a month. There are multiple places.
They're partnering with Cardano. I know you've heard that.
Well, I mean, in reality, I think that, and you're going to have cryptos that service like industries, right? I know of a crypto platform, blockchain platform right now to service the oil and gas industry, inventory supply, banks. They're, and I love that. I think those things are great. I think that their native currencies, again, are irrelevant. But I also, once I understood Bitcoin and proof of work, by the way, proof of work, when I talked about that 29 gigawatts of power to run the network, the nation of Spain and the nation of Poland barely use 30 gigawatts a year. Bitcoin is its own independent, energetic nation that cannot be controlled or ruled by anyone else. There are no single points of entry that have influence over the network. 28,000 nodes are run throughout the world, multiple millions of miners. And even if you look at the Lightning Network, there's 24,000 nodes on the Lightning Network. That makes our Bitcoin's layer 2 is more decentralized than any other altcoin layer 1, period. So true decentralization lives there. You can process transactions for a penny in a millisecond. And I do it 3 times a week, and I probably should videotape it when I do it so people can see it and believe me, because all the altcoins say Lightning Network doesn't work, although I use it at a pizza place, at an Italian restaurant, and at a shop in Dallas as much as I can. If I'm there,
So
I go there and spend money.
what wallet? What's the wallet that you use?
So I'm a multi-sig guy for my storage. So for my wallet, I use Trezor, and that's done through.
No, I mean on the Lightning Network to process this.
So you have to open your node. You have your own Lightning Network node, and you provide liquidity from layer 1. Yeah.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
so you just move Bitcoin from layer 1 into Lightning, and then you use that in the system. To be lack of deep technicals on that. Right. But it is interesting to watch that, because I started looking at things and saying, if I'm going to invest in a crypto, they all want to be considered commodity. What commodity is worth anything that isn't mined? Zero. There are no commodities. So I want to invest in the one that you have to mine. So I invested in that. I invested in XRP. I invested in Ethereum when I started out. They were the top 3 crypto, and that's just every week I was putting $25 into them. And then I started digging deeper, and I became a Bitcoiner. Part of the deep esoteric.
You still own your XRP?
No, I don't.
Oh man,
I do not. No, I mean,
I sold it. After the whole thing with the SEC crumbled, I said, well, all right, it's not going to go up. It's another stable coin, and then I'll look at it.
Well, there again, it's an easily explainable pump. It was mostly retail, and I maybe I do. I don't know. I have an Uphold account still. I haven't checked in forever. Maybe I do. It would be like a couple $100, but it maybe I don't know. As far as the holdings I had, I actually dumped right before that too, and I don't really care because I would have made like $1,000 or something.
Right.
And it sucks. And listen, I wish all the people who support XRP well. Some of the influencers there are ridiculous in claims, but time will tell. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I don't want to get into that beef. I'm not an XRP guy. I'm a Bitcoiner, and I really do wish all the people who have these coins. I hope they all boom. I hope everyone becomes a multi-billionaire, and that we get rid of governments. Like, that's where I stand on these things.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
But governments can easily acquire all of those altcoin companies who do have a lot of the tokens, and ultimately the government can acquire them, buy them, and run them over very quickly.
So let me ask you this: the strategic reserve, where are you with that? As far as wanting the federal government to own a strategic reserve in Bitcoin?
Well, I'm in between 2 places, a rock and a hard place. So when I researched and game theoried out, when I said, listen, Bitcoin is my holdings, and I think you'll find redundantly that well-researched people who have looked at everything kind of funnel back here. And all of your, like, I don't care if you own XRP and Ethereum, own Bitcoin too, right? Like, really, like, you have a piece of it. It's not going anywhere.
I think everybody should do that. I mean, that's the number one investment,
Yeah. Just whatever it is, just an allocation, and stop hating on it. It doesn't make any sense to hate on it. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Where do I stand on the reserve? The game theory is Bitcoin with layer 2 transactions and Lightning could absolutely become a world currency, not a world reserve currency. But even when I started this as an economist, when I went to my business partner, best friend, and he said, okay, what are you doing? And I was like, hey, listen, I just put X amount in Bitcoin. He's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, oh yeah, yesterday. But I don't see it the same way you see it. I see it being a treasury reserve asset. And this is in 2022. I said this would be something that would back a dollar, because gold for a gold-backed currency, gold is layer 1. And then you create currency on top of gold, that's layer 2. So gold is not transactable. Like there's no, I buy beef in gold from a rancher, but I never get any change. So yeah, like here's your ounce.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, my yard guy, I pay him in silver. Not all the time, but when he's like, hey, you got any more silver? I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and I'm happy to. I love that.
But
stuff.
You're right. I don't get change, so I got to go figure out. Okay,
And that's a hard part because I lose about $150 every time I buy beef.
Exactly.
And that's fine.
And then
like,
silver goes up, and I'm thinking, God, why didn't he come by 2 days?
Well, Mark, you're describing Gresham's law. Like we live in Gresham's law. There are multiple other assets that you could spend that are way better than the dollar.
Yeah.
And so you have good money and bad money. There are a lot of forms of good money: gold, silver, platinum, all the metals, Bitcoin. These are all better, but I'd rather spend dollars and save Bitcoin, right? So that's Gresham's law. Until the bad currency is gone, the good currency will not be spent. So I don't mind spending gold, silver, or Bitcoin anywhere because those are my people. So I want to be
exactly what happened to all the quarters and the silver quarters, the silver dimes, and the silver. The quarters and dimes. I think they stopped making it in silver in 1962. 62, and guess what? All that bad money chased out all the good because everybody that knew what they were holding didn't spend it.
Yep. Back in the day, I owned 12 pool tables with another guy, and part of the cool thing about owning pool tables in bars is we went and picked up a lot of quarters, and I have an entire bag of 1950s quarters and nickels because they were all silver. So somebody was playing a game of pool thinking they spent $1, but in reality they were spending like $18. They had no idea. So
I did that with nickels up until recently. Started doing it back in the mid 2000s because if you look at a nickel now, most of the nickel's gone. Yeah. There's a good website called coinflation.com. You can actually see how the money is, because right now those nickels that I have are worth 12 cents a piece, 10 cents, I don't know, it fluctuates, but they're basically double. Yeah. They're double what the government will give them to you. But yes, to your point, yes, it chases out the good.
Well, let me stay on path here because we're getting all over the place. I'm going to stay on path here. What do I think about the Bitcoin strategic reserve? I think the way they're doing it is exactly what I would want. Being that we're at 3% global adoption, 99% of people, including crypto people, don't really understand Bitcoin until you've been in a mine and you've seen the computers and you got to realize we wouldn't have AI at all if it weren't for Bitcoin miners because no one wants to. We need the lowest kilowatt per hour ever to make money, which is why I do flare gas stuff in Tennessee and Texas because I can buy flare gas or ethane very cheap, separate CO2, sell the CO2 for carbon credits and cash, and lower my electricity bill to -2 cents per kilowatt hour and mine Bitcoin at 27,000. Like that's utility. We have a real big problem. When I moved here in Texas, we had a snowstorm and the grid went out 2 weeks after I moved here. Then we allowed Bitcoin mining in Texas, which is now the Bitcoin mining capital of the world. And we haven't had any grid problems. Bitcoin miners are literally doing what's called flex load management for electric grids throughout the United States. Our average grid is about 75 years old. So you need this new injection of buyers for excess energy that sell back to the grid when the grid is low on energy. And that's what's happening with Bitcoin miners. So every time you're in an area with a 75-year-old grid that allows Bitcoin mining and your power doesn't go out, thank a Bitcoin miner. That wouldn't happen without us. That's, the whole blackout craze over the last 5 years. Oh, we're going to lose power. Bitcoin miners have been the ones stabilizing that grid. So I'm happy with the strategic reserve because they're keeping what we have, which, by the way, isn't 200,000. 100,000 of that goes to Bitfinex. So we have 100,000 Bitcoin, roughly. And that's great. We're keeping that.
Well, and let's just clarify. And also we'll clarify on the gold. The gold that's in wherever, Fort Knox, under the Federal Reserve in New York City, wherever it is, was stolen.
Yep.
Just like the Bitcoin that the government
100%.
has. 100% of it is stolen because the government doesn't generate anything. They take. All right.
That's right.
That's right. Clarify that.
Yeah, and I had a great conversation when I went and sold gold on Friday. I talked about Fort Knox with my gold broker, who's been a gold broker for 30 years, Vietnam vet, and really think deeply about how bad it will be if there's no gold in Fort Knox. Like really think bad. Nothing but bad comes from it.
Yeah,
so I like the fact they're keeping what they have. I don't like where they got it. That's basically Russ Ulbricht's Bitcoin. And I always hear you always hear two things about Bitcoin. Oh, it's sucking up all the energy and killing the environment. Where do you think that story came from? Where do you think that came from? A company called Ripple paid Greenpeace to do a white paper that has been completely discredited by 50 other white papers since then to start
Which
that
Ripple,
big trade.
what he's referring to is the XRP that we were talking about a little while
Yes.
ago. They're the corporation that owns that currency, that cryptocurrency.
Yes, and then years later they paid another $5 million for another campaign called "Change the Code." Change Bitcoin's code, go to proof of stake, even though proof of work is uncrackable and unhackable by AI and quantum at the time being. So, and I've met with
Cardano
core developers.
been running for 7 years, never been hacked, never gone down, never been hacked.
Yeah, that's what Ripple has. XRPL has gone down twice, once for almost 90 minutes.
Solana's gone, all of them.
They all have. Bitcoin went down in 2010 for a while too. So like blockchains have problems.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, for a few minutes, but yes, Bitcoin is by far the most secure, by far the most decentralized, and by far the most stable, which is why you're seeing it as a neutral reserve global asset.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have a corporation, doesn't have anything involved. So the strategic reserve, I like that we're keeping what we have. I like that we're keeping the crypto that we have too in a stockpile. I think eventually they're going to sell those in an auction. And by the way, that's how governments do it. They don't sell it on Coinbase. They sell it at auction. You can look it up online. I think they'll auction those off and use the cash to buy more Bitcoin. I think that's going to happen. I think that they are absolutely going to sell real estate and buy Bitcoin because like my house would have cost me 44 or 45 Bitcoin when I purchased it almost 5 years ago. It's worth twice as much and I could buy it today for about 12 Bitcoin.
Which the federal government owns, what, 400 million acres of real estate in the United States for some unknown reason. But
27% of the land mass in the United States is owned by the federal government.
They need to sell 100% of that.
You need nuclear testing grounds. You need They need facilities.
All right, fine. They can have Nevada. They can have.
Yeah. Well, they own 87% of
area.
Nevada.
What is it? Area 21. They can have. Okay.
51.
51. Area 51.
Yeah, our government that's called socialism when your government owns 25% of the land and 51% of the stock market is influenced by government spending. We already have socialism. It's already here. Yep. There's nothing that stops this train except for a complete failure of an economic system to kick them back. So that has to happen too. I like that we're doing taxpayer neutral. So as long as we're doing budget neutral transactions that don't cost the taxpayer money, I was never an advocate of let's print money and buy Bitcoin. I think that's a slap in the face for the 97% of people who don't understand Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. But I love that we are going to sell debt assets because most people look at our balance sheet for the Fed and they're like, wow, we're in such huge debt. Look at our assets. We have more assets as a nation than any other country in the existence of mankind. We have too many assets. It's twice the amount of debt we have. So we're really not in as bad a shape as most people promote. But we have some assets that are appreciating at negative or they're appreciating 2-3%. If we start taking some of those assets and selling them and buying Bitcoin with it strategically, we will be able to get rid of the deficit. And Trump's mentioned this multiple times. It will be the oil.
Where is Doge on this? They should be looking into that. What can we sell or what is? That's a good one to put on their list of things to do. Look at the assets that are negative.
They're putting 430 or 460 federal buildings on the market for sale. Where do you think that money is going to go? They're not going to pay down the debt with that.
No.
All I want is just to sell the Obama library and the Pelosi building and buy Bitcoin with it. Like just do that and I'm happy. Do whatever you want with the rest of it. Just give me the Pelosi building and the Obama building. I'm happy.
Trophies.
But I'm a fan of it. I think it's a good upgrade. I think it also creates there's a great book called Soft War, which is kind of hard to understand by Jason Lowery. Talking about, again, when you go to the hash rate, 800 exahash, 29 gigawatts of power, this is not an easy system to overpower. Russia is now mining with excess energy. Belarus is mining Bitcoin. Ethiopia is mining Bitcoin. Brazil is mining Bitcoin. About every month, a new country comes online and says, with our excess or our sustainable energy budgets, we're going to mine Bitcoin and turn our energy into money. So this is happening, no matter what anyone says and whatever dark doomsday Bitcoin going to zero theory they have out there is not grounded in mathematics or economics. It's grounded in theory. And I'm not going to say it can't ever happen, but the probability is very low at this point. So when we look at what we're doing here, we're creating a new arms race. And that's really what's needed. Now with Doge, I may have a different opinion on Doge than other people. I love Doge. I love what it's doing. I love we're exposing this corruption, fraud, and abuse. It has to be done. But at the same time, what's the end result and the final purpose? The final purpose is to embed an AI government. And right now we're appointing guys like Larry Ellison and Sam Altman in charge of Stargate to basically run our government, who are absolute Zionist transhumanists. And
Yeah.
and Doge, as exciting, you got to understand, like the Hegelian, am I saying that right? Hegelian model, create a problem, provide a solution, sell the solution as a savior. This is another piece of that, in my opinion. The corruption, the fraud, and the abuse, obviously we need to know about. No one's been arrested so far yet. I will say yet. I think a lot of people are going to go to jail in the end. But at the same time, what is the purpose? Like, you know, Trump has said we want to be the AI and crypto capital of the world. The funny thing is that conservatives 18 months ago, if you were a Trump supporter or conservative 18 months ago, and I said, you know what, I'm all in favor of an AI government and a crypto financial world, they would have all been like, you're crazy. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But now what's the opinion? Oh, heck yeah, let's do crypto and AI. Let's do it. Like, this is kind of how the system works. They get you to root for things that put them in deeper power. So if Larry Ellison, and it's not official, but if Larry Ellison's in charge of Stargate and Stargate is in charge of this new budget allocation from Doge, you can pretty much guarantee you'll live in a digital prison. Will Trump allow that? I don't know, and I don't think so. And I'm not one of those guys who's like, here's what's going on behind the scenes, because I've actually been behind the scenes, and even when you're actually behind the scenes on things, you still don't know everything. So I have no clue what's happening behind the scenes, but I can tell you from
I can tell you, Sam Altman is someone you definitely need to watch your back on. He is a liar.
Oh yeah,
he's one of the biggest liars, and you know, even Elon doesn't like him because of the things that went on with him. But and of course he has a he has a cryptocurrency,
WorldCoin.
Yes,
retina scans.
That's right. How you get this? You'll love this. How you get this coin is you have to scan your retina. They capture your data, and then they give you coin for scanning your. And people line up for it, dude. They line up.
Yeah, 650,000 people registered for it in one day because he gave away $20 for free for scanning your retina.
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, I'll go ahead and get the shot. Can I get a free?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, same exact trade-off. Same trade-off. So if you look at that Hegelian model, you know, it's pretty obvious to see. Does that mean that's the way it's going to turn out? No, but like you said earlier, I call balls and strikes. I don't try to I'm not here to promote my theory and prove to you I'm right or wrong. I just call balls and strikes. And the AI government scares me. And Sam Altman, you know, depending on your view, I don't know how many listeners you have. They may turn it off right now, but let's look at Sam Altman, Larry Ellison, and Elon Musk. They're all Ashkenazi Jews, all of them. Sam Altman was voted the most powerful, recognizable Jew in the world in 2023. So these are not the guys who are on the side of Gentile freedom, just to put it that way. And they're more importantly not on the side of freedom of it all, because Larry Ellison said you could end crime if you really took care of human behavior. If we could just manage human behavior, there'd be no more crime. And that's the guy that was put in the forefront at the White House on day 2 of the Trump administration. Again, balls and strikes. Wow. All you theorists out there, I listen to you. I'm not claiming I know. I'm just calling balls and strikes. I'm not saying that Trump is bad or Trump is good or what. I've never been that way. I support Donald Trump. I have for years, more than most of you have with my own personal time and personal life. And I think he wants to do the right thing. But I think that the clutches of power in this world are very well entrenched. We learned that in his first administration. The excuse was the swamp is wider and deeper than we thought. Did it shrink? I hope so. I hope so. But the intertwining of AI and crypto, and I'm going to separate crypto and Bitcoin. Crypto and Bitcoin are separate things because most of crypto, 99% of crypto, is proof of stake, which basically means the person with the most coins can use them for transactions and earn yield and make changes to a true proof of stake network. All it requires is I have a majority of the coins and I make the rules. That's no different than central banking and the current government structure we're in. It doesn't matter who owns Bitcoin coins. They have no vote. There's no power. It's just a byproduct of mining. So keeping it on path with the strategic reserve, I think it's a great thing for this country. I don't care what it does to my own personal wealth. I don't think any Bitcoiner looks at it and says the government's going to print money and buy. There are certainly greedy guys who do that, and there's some awful Bitcoiners, guys. Yeah. Like there's some awful Bitcoiners, some awful altcoiners, and there's some really good people in the middle. All I want is my country to be free, but I don't want my centralized government to own Bitcoin. That is how you would defeat Bitcoin. The game theory would denote that you use government. So here's how strong Bitcoin is. Every central bank hates Bitcoin. They've been talking crap about it forever. But what are they doing now? They're capitulating. They're capitulating. Why? Do you think they ever capitulate? There's a war taking place in Bitcoin and no other cryptocurrency. Now you have governments using free energy to mine, meaning they're mining at a very profitable rate with very high power they don't have to pay for. They are going to mine the coins. Ultimately, if they're making templates as a miner, because there's hashers and miners, they're different things. But if they're making their own templates and they're running nodes, which some of them are, ultimately in the next 10 to 15 years, they may have enough power to change Bitcoin. That's why you're seeing this boom in private mining and solo mining and node running, because Bitcoiners actually are a network. We don't rely on a government.
And you know, if you look at it, the IMF actually capitulated a few weeks ago.
Yeah, sort of.
El Salvador was not going to take the loan. I think it was $30 billion. You know, they've been mining Bitcoin now for 5 years. They were not going to, and then the IMF just recently capitulated on Bitcoin, saying, "Oh no, it's fine." And guess what? I just read 2 days ago they took the loan.
Not quite. So I think it's a $1.9 billion loan, but it came after El Salvador said that they had found between El Salvador, Honduras, and another country in that area that there's like $3 trillion of gold that they discovered. So in order to mine it, they needed cash. So the IMF offered them.
Gotcha.
They offered them $1.9 billion, and part of the deal was actually that El Salvador. So El Salvador was the first and only country. And by the way, what does El Salvador mean in Spanish? The savior.
Savior, yes.
Okay. So what was the first block of Bitcoin called, or any blockchain? The Genesis block.
Yeah.
So we've gone from Genesis to the savior biblically. By the way, in the Genesis block, there are multiple prayers and quotes from scripture in the Genesis block of Bitcoin. No one ever tells you that. Block 666 actually has a cast against the devil the name of Jesus Christ written in the code. So you've gone from Genesis to the savior, but El Salvador had actually been the first country to make Bitcoin legal tender. And most people don't know what that term means. Legal tender means that any vendor cannot refuse taking that currency. It doesn't mean that the government says you have to use Bitcoin. It says that all the vendors must accept Bitcoin if someone wants to spend money in Bitcoin. In America, there is one legal tender. It's the US dollar, not gold and silver. There's one federal legal tender, and that's the dollar. So I was advocating.
So let me ask you: does Texas allow legal tender for gold and silver?
So there's 24 states who do, but the only people who accept gold and silver right now are gold and silver brokers. So they've written it into legislation, but it hasn't become an official act. And gold and silver is going to have a major problem being legal tender. You can't make change.
That's difficult. That's right.
It's not divisible. That's like one of the big knocks against metals in today's world, that we have such microtransactions that occur. It has to be divisible so you can have change. You need to be able to make change. And it's very hard to carry around. And I took gold and silver to a broker. I had a 38-pound bag with like 600 ounces of silver and a bunch of other stuff that I had to carry in a backpack, and I felt like I was hiking. It was pretty heavy.
Yeah, you know, Ron Paul, I don't know if it was 2008 or 2012 when he was campaigning. Part of his staff got stopped at an airport, and they confiscated, I think it was around $10,000 of American Gold Eagles or something like that.
What just happened in Texas? 2 weeks ago, two Chinese nationalists, God knows what they were doing. They got pulled over. They had they didn't commit any crime. They were just Chinese nationalists traveling in Texas, which I'm suspicious of. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be soft on the Chinese nationalists, but they committed no crime. They still have not been charged with a crime other than being Chinese in Texas, which should be a crime. But in my opinion, but they committed no crime. They had $250,000 in gold bars in the car. The government confiscated it. The lady who was holding it sat there and said, "We're never giving it back to them." And the interviewer said, "What crime did they commit?" And they go, "They had gold. We don't know where it came from. We don't know how they earned this gold. They just confiscated it. They're going to sell it, and they're going to use it for $250,000 for public works." So
Ron Paul got his back, but because it was Ron Paul, anybody else, me, you, anybody else, you would have never gotten that back. It's gone.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah, you're immediately guilty if you're holding gold. Look at Bob Menendez, who is guilty No one talks about the $1 million in cash that he had in his house. They talk about the 4 gold bars.
Mhm.
So they've tried to demonize gold, but they can demonize gold because if you have gold in the world we live in today, people automatically think you're a criminal. Like, it's just the way it is because it's a bearer asset. It's not a debt instrument. We spend debt instruments. We don't carry bearer assets. Bitcoin is a bearer asset with no issuer. That's the key. There's no issuer. There's no corporation. There's no Charles Hoskinson. There's no Ripple. There's no Ethereum Foundation. There's nothing. It's just a protocol that produces its own Bitcoin after you invest and contribute to the network. So I love the strategic reserve because it's budget neutral and it won't cost the taxpayer anything. And I think ultimately we're going to own a lot of Bitcoin. And I don't think that we will own any altcoins. I think we'll sell them because they're not the same thing. Bitcoin is money. The other things are like subway tokens. They are literally called tokens. A subway token is useful. I can use this. If I have a subway token, I need to take the subway. I'm going to use that token to take the subway, and it's going to move me faster than I can go on my own feet, and it's going to be very cost effective. That's a token.
Yeah, I mean the altcoins, the technology. There's going to be ones that rise to the top because of the technology. The rest of that stuff's going to go away.
Yep.
You're talking about digital gold. All this talk of owning Ethereum and XRP and all, it just doesn't make sense.
I mean,
for the government to own that, and
not for the government to own. Those are American corporations and foundations, and it's already your strategic stockpile needs to be considered globally neutral, and the only globally neutral digital asset in the world is Bitcoin. Period.
So I wanted to kind of. I'll let you keep going, but I think some people, at least what I found here on X, will kind of give an idea of the things that you've been talking about, where we are with the adoption of that. You talk about we've talked about Web 2, we've talked about Web 3, and honestly, this is where we are with all this. This is how new this is.
Yeah.
Let me share real quick. I found this the other day, and I thought, man, this would be good.
We'll pop it up.
All right, come on.
Come on, Mark.
Let's go. All right, here we are. Let's this right here, the
From
Bitcoin
River.
adoption path.
Yep.
This is where we are. Just
Correct.
to give everybody kind of we're still way early in this technology, in this digital gold owning as an asset.
Way early. Actually, I didn't anticipate what's happening right now when I really started to kind of hammer down and figure out Bitcoin. And by the way, I know so many people in the network. I've had a really advanced education on this. In no way, shape, or form did anybody who understands Bitcoin expect us to be accelerating at this rate. I was thinking by 2030, we would be where we are today. So this massive onset, this rapid onset of digital assets into the world is confusing. I've been trying to get to doing each digital asset class, an educational piece of my podcast, but they haven't released them yet in full. So what most digital assets, when they hear the term digital asset, you'll hear Bitcoin and digital asset. The digital assets that I believe that they're really going to be promoting and working on are stablecoins. And a stable coin is just a digital representation of a dollar, right? So it's $1. It stays $1. You can use it on payment networks. The Lightning Network just added Tether. When I met with them, the Bitcoiners were upset because Tether, all stable coins are centralized. They're all controlled by a corporation. And the Bitcoiners were upset, but Lightning explained it pretty simply. There are, about 1,500 different currencies in the world, and we only do Bitcoin. We are a payment network. We're going to take them all, but the beautiful part is they all settle in Bitcoin. So I can send a Tether, or I can send another stable coin on that payment network in the next year, and I can just cash it all out for Bitcoin, put it in my wallet. So it's really a way of building more Bitcoin ownership. But you look at that adoption rate, and it's comparable to the internet. Like you saw all those stats on there showing you where we are adoption wise, and Bitcoin's sitting in the $80,000 range at that stage of adoption, with 21 million available, globally neutral asset with no issuer. There's no baggage. Right, there's no SEC baggage. There's no, Vitalik from Ethereum was just seen sniffing the butt of a robotic dog. Like, I'm really happy there's no founder of Bitcoin, to be honest with you, because there's no baggage from the founder. And in the end, I think that you start, and I'm not as bullish as Michael Saylor. Okay, so like I think he's a little bit he's probably an asset of some intelligent agency to begin with. Most people at that statute, they probably are, but he's leading people into Bitcoin. So you're gonna psyops are everywhere, guys. Like this is how the game works. But when you look at it from that perspective, where is he leading you and why? And he's better at explaining Bitcoin than just about everybody else from a macro and financial perspective. But with adoption rates being 3%,
which, by the way, who he's talking about, how much does he own?
500,000
corporation. Bitcoin. He's figured out the secret of how to do this. MicroStrategy is his company. He sells billions of dollars worth of stock into the company and turns around and uses that money to buy Bitcoin. So it's a cycle. So you buy his company, which is, I don't think they make any money, but people buy it because they know how much Bitcoin he has. So the stock goes up, he sells it, makes money, and turns around and buys Bitcoin with it. So it's actually genius.
It is genius. And I think in the end, and a lot of people think this way too, I think in the end, there's only two outs for MicroStrategy. Is either one, he becomes a Bitcoin bank, which Hal Finney, the actual creator of Bitcoin, said in 2010, Bitcoin needs Bitcoin banks to become a successful global currency. So he either becomes a Bitcoin bank or he becomes a 6102. You got to remember, our country, when things become successful, we have a very strong track record of confiscating successful things and calling them government property, like we just talked about. The gold in Fort Knox was 6102. That was FDR's executive order 6102, confiscating all the Americans' gold and putting it in Fort Knox. They didn't spend a penny. I think Strategy, or MicroStrategy, now called Strategy, I think he is setting himself up for government or nationalization of his country, of his company. And I honestly think he's been working with the White House to acquire Bitcoin at this level. There's really no other reason behind it.
Even the Biden administration, you think he was working with him?
I think Trump has had influence on both administrations. And I think anyone who thinks differently than that is missing the point here. Like, Trump is the most powerful political figure in the world. So even if he wasn't president, he was still influencing plans for when he would be. And that's my opinion. I can't prove that in any way, shape, or form, but it's certainly my opinion. That's where I get a little QE, right? Like I think Trump has had a lot more influence outside of the White House than he has in the White House, because there's no bureaucracy behind decision making. And by the way, Saylor started doing that in 2020. So he started buying Bitcoin for MicroStrategy when Trump was still in office. Also in office, that's when the lawsuit started. It was when Trump was still in office. So a lot of these things happen. I don't know. I'm not behind the scenes. I don't claim to know that. But what I do think is that one private corporation owning that much Bitcoin who has no intention of selling it is bad for Bitcoin. I think that a government owning a lot of Bitcoin with no intention of selling it or spending it is bad for Bitcoin. I think the more human beings, the more normal people who have it, who can spend it with others, is good for Bitcoin.
I think that goes with saying for gold or anything. I don't think any national government or state should own assets like that, period. But
well, they should. I think they should buy it, right? If they're going to buy it, do it, and don't put a 20-year lock on it. If you need to sell it, sell it. But Bitcoin is designed for payments, and right now I can tell you it was released on Reuters and a bunch of other websites. That's how Russia's been selling oil for the last 2 years, is with Bitcoin transactions. Bitcoin, not an altcoin, not an American corporation, a globally neutral, decentralized, open source blockchain. That's what's
I was surprised he came out and admitted that, but I guess that's okay.
We had to, because he's now using nuclear power to mine Bitcoin. Like, Russia is getting huge into mining Bitcoin. They're using they have a nuclear facility that's dedicated to mining Bitcoin. So it has a role in the future. I don't know what that role is, but I would love to see you own Bitcoin and spend Bitcoin at a restaurant or at a coffee shop, because that's using real money. So go back to El Salvador. So El Salvador was doing that. People had Lightning nodes opened up all throughout the entire place. All of their farmers markets, they were buying and selling with Bitcoin. The IMF gave them a loan. And when they came in, the loan provisions did not include anything about Bitcoin. A week later, they changed the provisions and said, you need to denounce it as legal tender. So now you can still transact in Bitcoin in El Salvador, but if you don't want to accept Bitcoin, you can now decline it. That's
so, but they didn't do that, right? The IMF tried to pressure them into that. Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah. The thing he hasn't capitulated on is he keeps buying Bitcoin. So everyone thought he would take the loan and just buy Bitcoin with it, which he may in the end. but they've changed the contract like 6 or 7 different times. They removed legal tender. About 8% of El Salvador's transactions were in Bitcoin over the past 4 years. People look at that number and say it's measly. It's not. That's 600,000 people transacting in Bitcoin per day in one country, living on a Bitcoin standard. They can still do
the
that.
IMF to death.
Yes.
Because that means they can finally go away. These third world countries don't need your money.
Who controls the IMF?
The United States.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most of the gold that we hold is the IMF's gold. Like, most people don't realize that the New York Fed, 50% of the gold holdings at the New York Fed are for the IMF. So
wasn't it a couple of years ago, Germany asked for their gold back under
Yes.
the Federal Reserve in New York? Did we ever give it back to them? I don't think
No.
we did. No.
no.
Yeah.
Germany, since World War II, has been a puppet state that was allowed to thrive for a very long time until they had full clutches on society. And now that they have a full Weimar Part 2 happening in Germany, they sold $2 billion worth of Bitcoin at $47,000. The country missed
and they
out on
had to. It's not that they made that choice. The law said that they had to sell it. Which at first I was thinking, why would they
That's
do
not
that?
what the law said. That's what the lawmakers changed the law to say. So they could have held it, but the liberal lawmakers said, "Why are we holding this Bitcoin? Let's sell it at 45,000 or something."
So
like
they
that.
changed the law. They didn't have to. I had
They
always
didn't have
heard
to.
that the law. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they didn't
Hey,
have to.
speaking of World War II, you said you were you're into that. Have you read or heard of the book Day of Deceit?
Yes, I have.
The truth about FDR and Pearl Harbor.
Yes.
You know, that whole book came about because of the Patriot Act, which was the Freedom of Information Act, which surprisingly Bill Clinton was the one that approved that. You know, and that was the first. I'm not a big World War II buff, but when I read that blew me away.
Well, FDR was a communist. I mean, they wrote a manifesto for FDR. So people say he wrote it. He did not write it. Somebody else wrote it for him, but they attribute it to Roosevelt's Communist Manifesto. He provoked everything that happened in World War II.
Probably his chief of staff wrote it for him because he was a communist, well-known communist. And because of FDR's health problems, his chief of staff is the one that made policy.
Yes.
For him.
He had no control.
None at all.
Wow.
And most of his advisors had something in common. They all wore necklaces with 6-pointed stars on them. All of them. All of them. That was the FDR administration and the Churchill administration. They were Goy frontmen. That's pretty much all they were. That era in history is fantastical. When I started talking about these things to people, like, I got laughed out of rooms, and now people are like, "Hey, can you come over to my house and tell me about this again?" And 6102 was the gold confiscation that happened under FDR, right? He started, by the way, Nixon gets credit for taking us off the gold standard, but FDR started the process.
Yeah.
He started it. And he took everyone's gold at a certain price, revalued it. And I keep hearing this revalue gold. Let me explain to you how this works. So it's under an agricultural act from 1933, where we have the president does have the ability, without congressional approval, to make an arbitrary number of the value of our gold. Like, that can happen. That does not change the price of spot gold. And by the way, let me break another trend here. Gold and silver, I thought, were decentralized. I have always thought the government doesn't control it. It's a bearer asset. I own it. And that's true. However, when it comes to silver, 81% of the silver in the world is owned by banks. And it's a little higher than that for gold. So, trying to think you can squeeze the banks, they can just flood the market with sales all day long to keep the price down.
And it's interesting you said that, because I think that's what they do with silver to keep the price down. I honestly
they short it on paper. Yeah, they short the paper market.
I think silver really, it should be trading at around $50 to $60 an ounce, and I think
it will be. I think we'll see $50 silver, maybe $60 silver this year. I think that's going to happen. That could happen this year, if not by the end of 2026. And I think we see $4,000 gold eventually. I also think we see a $250,000 to $300,000 Bitcoin. I think that follows directly with M2 money supply. We could see there may or may not be an alt season ever again. There probably isn't a cycle in crypto anymore now that everyone else is involved.
Even the guys that I follow that are traders and know it very well have even given up on that. I think it's over. I think right now we're just waiting for liquidity.
Yeah.
And world liquidity is going up. China's printing like
printing.
crazy. Britain is printing like crazy. And of course, we're going to be the last holdouts because
Sure.
we are the dollar. But we're going to do it. And then I don't think you're going to see an alt season. I think you're going to see everything go up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think Bitcoin always leads the way. Like alt season is just a lag.
Yes.
I mean, what's happened? The reason there are alt seasons because Bitcoin rises, and then guys cash out part of their Bitcoin and they pump it into altcoins, and that drives up the price of altcoins. They cash out and buy Bitcoin again. That's literally
so what
how
he's
the market's
talking about is when you go to trade cryptocurrencies. Obviously Bitcoin has what 90% of the total crypto market.
Oh no,
What is
62. 62.
62%
If you
of the,
exclude stablecoins, 71%.
So 71% of the market, and then alts have that other half or piece of it. And so what he's saying is that alt season means that liquidity comes into the market, people begin to sell their Bitcoin to buy these other riskier assets because they're seeing them go up fast.
Let me ask you a question here. Most Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yep.
Most of their money is in some 401k that's stuck in mutual funds. How do they, like my wife just transitioned from one company to another, and she's like, how do I diversify? How can I get into Bitcoin from changing my 401k to mutual funds to Bitcoin? How does that happen?
Sure. Well, the simple solution is that now that you went from one company to another, you have to roll over your 401k and you have to roll it into an IRA. And there's companies like Unchained Capital, River, iTrust. They will roll your cash value because you can't carry the investments. It comes in a check, and they will open up self-custody IRAs for Bitcoin. You can do this. You can actually get a cold wallet, multi-sig storage at Unchained Capital, who's one of my partners for my company. I don't get paid to say this, but they're fantastic. It's where I hold my Bitcoin, and they have the ability for you to have those Bitcoin. Like having a little device, a cold wallet is just keys. It's just your keys. The Bitcoin never leaves the blockchain. It just doesn't. It can't be run on another blockchain. Neither can their cryptos be run on Bitcoin. They're all native currencies. So you can roll that over into an Unchained or an iTrust IRA and buy Bitcoin with that. People are doing that in droves right now. It's a huge business. What I would suggest is speak with a financial advisor. I used to be one a long time ago. Speak with one about the dollar amount and get a projection for a Roth conversion, because you can roll over into a Roth. There will be taxes and penalties that you pay, but then you never pay taxes and penalties ever again. Or penalties, yes, but never taxes again on that money. 401k plans are a trap. 71, we went off the gold standard. I think it was 74 is when IRS code 401k was written. And what it basically said is, hey, taxes do nothing but go up, right? Like the original income tax was 0.5% in 2000 or in 1913. Now we're at 37% federal for the highest level.
Wow.
And they've never gone down. So why don't you, while taxes are relatively low and you have an ability to earn, put this money over here, you don't pay taxes on it, but then you retire and mathematically taxes are 51% when you retire, and you're only allowed to invest in the stock market pretty much. So there was a revolution with self-directed IRAs, which was used for real estate primarily, but now you're seeing more inflows into Bitcoin than you are into real estate with these self-directed IRAs. So I would definitely get a consultation. They're always free with those groups. And talk to them about it and say, what would this look like if we converted to a Roth? And let them give you the numbers, and then you can make the assessment. So even if you put it in Bitcoin or you don't, at least that way you don't pay taxes on that money ever again. 401k plans are a trap because our stock markets and bond markets are completely controlled by the central banks and Wall Street. And if they have your money harvested since 1974 in a tax beneficial account and they want to collapse the market, I've been telling people this. You want to watch a black swan? You want to see social chaos? About 80% of Americans that are 401k plan is their retirement. That's it. Just there's no outside accounts, no bearer assets. And imagine what would happen if Wall Street just pulled the plug and it went down 50% overnight, which we've seen before.
Right.
You see suicides and drunken stupors.
Super unhappy with just we have a very little bit of some other things, but I've been super unhappy with just having my money be in a 401k. Extremely unhappy.
The
And have
casino.
been looking for some time. And I was like, well, the only way I'm going to be able to do this is if I change from one travel agency to another so that I can get this money out somehow. Somehow.
Yeah. Talk to, I don't want to give you advice on air, but talk to a financial advisor and they will walk you through the Roth conversion rollover.
Okay.
It's definitely beneficial. But yeah, Mark, we will see drunken stupors like you've never seen before. Yeah, people
jumping out of buildings like in the 20s with the Depression.
Oh yeah. But you're corralled. I mean, that's your money's corralled in a 401k. It just is. Like there are strong advocates, and I can argue with them on logic all day long. Why would I want to avoid taxes when I'm working and then pay higher taxes when I'm retired and have a limited amount of investments that may or not be beneficial to me based on market timing?
Right.
So we're not entering a market. We're entering a market, and Mark, to give you an idea of liquidity. What I see happening is I see Trump, the other day, his first administration, every day he talked about the stock market booming. Last month, he was asked about the stock market because it's down like 10% since he came into office. And he said, I'm not even looking at it. Well, the purpose is we have between $7 and $9 trillion in U.S. debt, treasury debt, that's coming due this year. Well, that debt was issued at 2%. Okay, so if we refinanced them right now, it'd be 4.3 or 5%. So double, almost 3 times the amount of interest payments on the same amount of debt. So the stock market has to go down. When the stock market goes down, people put money in bonds. When the price of a bond goes up, the bond yield goes down. It's like a triple beam. So you're going to see money flood from the stock market into the bond market. Prices of the bonds go up, yield go down, they refinance. And then I actually think we see a massive bull market in the stock market once that money is refinanced, end of this year, early next year. So if you're in the 401k, you're in those investments. That's just my opinion. I'm just some guy in a hoodie in my guest bedroom. Pretty good at doing this. I've been doing it a long time. People pay me money to tell them what to do in the market. So I see that happening, and like I'm positioned, I have no bond or stock allocation at all, except for my wife's 401k at her job, which is nominal. And most of that's in money market. So we're just sitting there collecting 4.5% interest. And I'm more than happy with that. I don't want to lose that money. Mm-hmm. So yeah, take a look at the Roth conversion. I think it's going to be really big for you. It's going to be an eye opener for you to realize that, hey, we're going to retire in the next few years. Now we don't have to pay any taxes on that money coming out. That's a big benefit.
Yeah, one of Trump's thing I think is going to do is right now the dollar's strong. He's trying to weaken it.
He has to.
He's doing everything he can to weaken the dollar, and then once he weakens the dollar, then I think you're going to start to see things moving. You're going to see the stock market start moving, and that's interesting. You said that maybe it's going to take that with the bonds and then paying that debt down, and then it happens.
Yeah, look at foreign countries like
the game plan.
Like the Russian economy. So most people don't pay attention to this stuff. So the dollar is the reserve currency of the world. Mm-hmm. And Biden and Putin had their spats, and whether that's real or not is probably a 1%. Any of that stuff's real. But when they had that spat, the only way you could weaken Russia is to strengthen the dollar, because everyone transacts internationally in the dollar. So when our dollar is strong, that means all the other currencies are weak. So I have friends that live in Russia and UK and all over the place, and they're like, I want your dollar to go down so that my money goes further in my own country. So there is a global economy that we live in, and that global economy is dominated by the dollar. And what Trump is planning on doing is, I think, this is my opinion, weakening the dollar, shorting the stock market, going long in the bond market, refinance the debt, launch a bunch of US-based stablecoins, so that you can get the dollar hegemony in all countries throughout the world that currently don't have it because it's digital. Anyone with a Coinbase on their phone in Uganda or Patagonia, they can download something on the internet and get US dollars and stable coins and trade them in their local markets any way they like. That's coming. That is a CBDC in disguise being issued out globally through private corporations. That's what's coming. There's no stopping that either.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. And it's funny you did say that, because that's exactly what stable coins really are. You talk about a CBDC, the Federal Reserve is not going to do it. There is a Fed now. It's kind of like a CBDC. But
it's a payment. Those are rails. Yeah. There's no currency on Fed now. It runs the dollar, but it's faster rails for payments.
So what do they use to make the transaction go instantaneous though?
Dollars.
No. I mean, the technology to make it do that.
Yeah, it's Fed Now is its own. So we launched Fed Now and RL something. We actually have 3 CBDC programs. You can go to AI and look it up. They're in America. There are 3 CBDC testing programs that are still live.
Yeah.
Like they're still live. One of them's RL something. The other one's Fed Now, but they're still live. We're still testing them. There is a slight difference, and Christine on my podcast, Educate, I'll give her full credit.
Oh man, and I will let everybody know that interview that was great. She's good. You did a good interview. I think everybody should go check out that interview you did with her. That was
And pay
really
attention
good.
tomorrow. I've got Tiffany Cianci coming out tomorrow, who's that lady who was just on InfoWars and a bunch of other places talking about private equity. I interviewed her on Friday, so that comes out on Monday. That's a great interview. She's just a fireball. But she told me, I said, stable coins and CBDCs are the same thing, just a different name. And they're not. CBDC is pure fiat. It's just numbers on a computer. A stable coin actually has to have some backing. So what stable coins are going to do, so imagine what happens. The stock market goes down, bond market goes up, yields go down, we're refinancing debt. Our country runs on debt. In no time in the next year, in my opinion, will we have a different financial system. It has to be the same one. It just takes too much to switch it around.
Yeah.
So what they're going to do is build stable coins and authorize every bank in America is going to launch a stable coin. I think Bank of America just came out and said they're launching Fidelity. They're all going to do it. You're going to have thousands of stable coins called digital assets, but the requirement is going to be that you have to buy US treasuries. So China's not buying our treasuries. Japan's not buying our treasuries. Stable coins will be the new buyer of US treasuries, our debt. And the beautiful thing about a stable coin is all I have to do is keep my stable coin $1 and I earn all this interest from the United States government. I'm considering launching a stable coin because like Tether, everyone hates Tether. Tether made $13.5 billion last year from buying Bitcoin and buying treasuries for 100 employees.
Yes. How many employees? Say that again.
100. They have 100 employees and made $13 billion just issuing a stable coin. But they buy Bitcoin with their proceeds and they use their debt. They have a huge debt base behind them. They can borrow money from anyone, anywhere in the world. And they're getting into Bitcoin mining heavily. And I know this personally, heavily. So all they do is buy Bitcoin with the interest they get from the United States government. They have even Howard Lutnick came out. They're the 19th largest buyer of U.S. debt in the world as a stable coin, a private stable coin, who actually has a gold-backed stable coin. People are talking about that. Oh, gold's the winner because we're going to peg it to a stable coin. Let me ask you a question, all 3 of you. Will you trust the United States government that that tells you that they have gold and issues a stable coin? Will you actually trust that they have the gold to back it?
No.
I never will. That's why I use Bitcoin. I know exactly how many Bitcoin exist and who has what. I don't need to trust anyone at all, but they're going to try to embed another system. We're going to tokenize gold, tokenize silver. I can tokenize my phone right now and partition it off and sell it to a buyer in fractions. That's cool. That's a cool thing. I love tokenization. It just needs a lot more laws behind it. And I personally will never trust any government that tells me they have a gold-backed stable coin because they have no requirement to prove it.
So, sorry guys, I'm going to have to jump. I got the family dinner at 8 o'clock. So
no worries.
I would like, if you would come back, Eric, I'd love to talk about the tokenization of assets. I think it's interesting. And you had mentioned a book that's free in one of the interviews you did or one of your podcasts about a book that was available that talks about.
It's called The Great Taking by David Webb.
Yes.
Everyone in the world should read that.
Come on and we just kind of talk about that. That would be great.
Yeah. Do you know what an NFT is? A non-fungible token. It's the thing everybody makes fun of. Like tokenization is just making an NFT for your car, an NFT for a stock. They're just NFTs. Right. They're digital representations of a real world asset. And they are going to very, very misunderstood in the space. I mean, it's an exciting space.
They are, because I up until I heard you say that, I was excited about tokenization of my stocks and all of this because I can, trade it, borrow again, do all these things with it. But
think of it this way. So you have an altcoin with a blockchain, and that altcoin has a CEO and a board of directors and venture capitalists who are all very much wealthier than you, who got all those coins for free. They spend money on marketing to get you to buy it. They can sell it to you, and they make a lot of money. They made billions of dollars. Now they're going to work with the government, and the government's going to tokenize your house and your stocks and your bonds, and they're going to put it on the blockchain. Do you think it's outside the realm of human thinking that the government could influence all of those human beings to pay off all of their validators to make a change to that blockchain and steal all your assets? David Webb does a very good description of this, saying that the New World Order will come with tokenized real world assets. It'll begin with your bank account. They'll tokenize your dollar through a stable coin. Then they'll go into real world assets, stocks and bonds, ultimately into forest land, farmland, and your home. And because these are private blockchains that appear to be decentralized, but actually have heavy human influence into them, they can be manipulated. And in David Webb's book, he specifically says that they will steal your wealth using blockchain, tokenized assets, and cross-border payments in the blink of an eye. So that is part of the deep state plan from a guy who knows lots of people in the deep state and has been in the rooms with them, now lives off grid and is terrified for what we're going through. There's good and bad with everything, right? That's just the way to really look at things balanced. There's good and bad with Bitcoin. I'm not sitting here telling you Bitcoin is I think it's the greatest thing in the world because proof of work decentralizes everything. If you have to actually do something, then you have to contribute. And if you have to contribute, then you have a say. And if you have a say, you can make a change. That's like democracy. But outside of that, I mean, governments are trying to mine. They're trying to buy the actual coins. They are attacking Bitcoin and disguising it as some wonderful thing. I'm not the guy sitting here going, oh, and the United States has to have a reserve. We have to, because that's going to be a global neutral reserve asset. You have to have a piece of it. But get yours before they do, because if they gobble it all up and there's nothing left, so if you have it, you'll probably be very wealthy and won't care. But ultimately, if you buy all of it and put it on a shelf, then you have to use government issued money. That's just the way it's going to be. And they're going to buy these corporations. I think you're going to see a lot of altcoins in the future become acquisition targets of the government, which isn't a bad thing. It's good. It should be good for you. If it was done right and you wanted true democracy from the beginning, there wouldn't be altcoins. All these altcoins would have built their solutions on layer 2 of Bitcoin, but that's not as profitable as getting $5 billion from VCs and printing money out of thin air and selling it to your audience for 20 years. That's not as profitable. So money has always gotten in the way of money, and freedom has always gotten in the way of government desires. So the more you desire to be free, do your research. I'm a Bitcoiner. I think you should buy Bitcoin. I don't care what you buy. I'm not going to ever make fun of you. Do what you think is best for you and your family. Have some gold and silver, physical gold and silver. Have some Bitcoin. Put money in oil and gas. Energy is the future. There is no Bitcoin without energy. There are no cryptos without energy. There is no AI without energy. There is no quantum without energy. Invest in energy, gold, silver, Bitcoin, and then raw land. God only made so much. Those are the 5 things that I've put my money into for the last 4 years. And my portfolio I will put my portfolio against anyone on Wall Street in the last 5 years, period, point blank.
Well, that's a good point. They're not making any more land, and eventually they're not going to be any more Bitcoin. So there you go. Hey, Eric, it was good to meet you. Mike.
Same, Mark.
Denise, you guys have a good week.
Bye, Mark.
Take care, Mark.
All right.
Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on, brother. And I mean, it just seems in God's providence that he just keeps kind of pointing to Bitcoin. And because we haven't really understood it,
right,
we've just kind of been procrastinating. But we're going to have, this is one of those shows, guys, that you'll have to listen a few times, just like some of our eschatology shows, like for people that don't study eschatology and I use all these big words and, for me, I'm a total newbie in this. And this is one of those shows where you get a notepad, look up these terms, and hopefully we'll have you back. I know Mark definitely wants you back.
Absolutely. Sure. And if you want some more help, this is kind of this is a free-for-all conversation, so it was fun to have. But if you want just a 45-minute tutorial on Bitcoin mining, and the history of money, you can go to the Rice Report on Rumble or YouTube. Scroll down a little bit. I have a Bitcoin 101 video that I did for about 200 investors live. And there's no promotion. There's no talking about me or what I do. It's just explaining the history of money, why Bitcoin was invented, what Bitcoin is, how mining works, and how the whole process, I believe, completely separates money and state. That's all I want to do. Separate money and state. I don't want any human beings. Money should be a protocol on the internet that's immutable. Like Bitcoin cannot be changed unless you spend billions and billions of dollars to take over mining. That's really the only attack vector, which is happening right before our eyes. If that happens, it all falls. I always hear Bitcoin's going to zero. Let me tell you what happens. If Bitcoin goes to zero, crypto goes to negative 500. That's how it works. If Bitcoin falls, there will be no trust in crypto, period.
Right.
Just like if GE were to go bankrupt, the entire stock market would crumble.
Right.
If NVIDIA fell, the whole stock market would fall. That's just how finance really works. But look at that video on Rumble or YouTube. It's Bitcoin 101 on the Rice Report. It's just 45 minutes, and it's very simple. I explain Bitcoin mining like I did before. It's an assembly line, quality control, quality assurance, make sure it's good, put on the blockchain, get paid. It's really not as complex as you think it is.
I've got to get you hooked up to a friend of mine. His name's Tom. He works for Andrew Torba at gab.com.
Mm-hmm.
And he does something with Bitcoin where he builds these store things and he stores all it. I don't know. But anyway, I'll have to hook you up with him. He's a great guy.
Well, Andrew Torba is a big proponent of Bitcoin, as is, I forgot his name, but the CEO of Rumble. They just bought, here's an interesting thing for your audience. They just bought $17 million worth of Bitcoin. I started buying Bitcoin at $10. You do not need $80,000. You can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin for $10 a week. River.com is the greatest place for newbies to Bitcoin. You can set up a dollar cost average, $10 a week, $50 a month, whatever you want to do. River is a Bitcoin only exchange, and they have a full-time dedicated customer service division to help you in any of your transactions. They make it very easy. They've been around for years. That's actually the chart that Mark showed us is from river.com. They're for the newbies. They're like, if you're new to it, go to river.com. They have a great blog. They have great information, very articulate and very fact-driven, but they're the best place to start. And, you know, Bitcoin may not outperform some other coins, but statistically over the course of I look at it as a savings account. I don't hold much money in the bank. It's my savings account. If I need money, I can cash out and put it in my bank anytime I want. But the beautiful thing is the IRS can't ever come after my Bitcoin, ever. Mm-hmm. Even if they know where it's at. They don't have my information. So if you want to be free, start setting some money over there and just get acclimated with it. I will never tell anyone, just go buy like other people do. Go buy, put all your money in Bitcoin. No, start with $10. Start with whatever you're comfortable with. Put it in there and start learning and asking questions. And, you know, DM me, reach out to me. I'll be happy to have a conversation with anyone and be as middle of the road as I can be, even though I love Bitcoin. There are other altcoins out there that'll probably do very well. Their blockchains will probably be very successful. I have no idea how their currency will be. Bitcoin is just the currency. That's what I'm looking for. Separation of state and money.
Right on. Before I let you go, who do you have lined up for some guests? What are you looking forward to?
Well, this week, so I have Tiffany Cianci coming out tomorrow. I just had Larry Johnson on. That's live now on YouTube. I still have to put it up on Rumble. I was going to do that before I got on here. So he should be up on Rumble today, talking about Yemen, Ukraine, and Israel and Iran. And he's, you know, former Intel guy, so he's got really good information. And just Larry's just an amazing guy. So he's out now. Tiffany will be out tomorrow. I think you'll all love that because it's talking about the evils of PE, private equity. I call it pirate equity, even though I'm in it. But there's like I raise money for good projects, and I want to save energy and create good compute. Most private equity is leveraged buyouts, LBOs, and these are the guys who buy companies and gut them like you would buy an old car and sell it for parts. Mm-hmm. Those guys are destroying the country in more ways than you could possibly imagine. It's truly a communist construct. She is in their sights, and she is just on point. And then I've got the gentleman who runs Americans for Prosperity. He'll be coming out this week. The other two interviews I have this week, I try to keep them private, but I think one of them you'll recognize the guy's name. The other one you'll never heard of, but he's super interesting. And I try to mix them up. I'm not trying to be a famous media person, I love good conversations, but we'll be talking about politics, money, politics, and religion in every conversation. But you'll love Tiffany. You'll love Larry. It's 35 minutes, very to the point. I think I might have Louis Gohmert on Friday, Texas congressman for a long time. He was on before. He and I got along very well. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to build these repeating guests where I can watch 3 different interviews. You can see the 3 different things they predicted or what changed or where their stance is. But we don't, you know, we're a little tiny podcast, so we don't have like people beating down our door to come on. But we try to get a lot of the entrepreneurs there. I'm actually trying to get a gentleman out of Austin, Texas this week who has built the first functioning small modular reactor. So the first real nuclear power for a home. and they're about 2 years away from market ready. I met him because I want to use that for Bitcoin mining and AI. But he is about 2 years out from commercial viability to actually create a box the size of a large shoebox or boot box that would power your home for 50 years for like
Wow.
$8,000. Like, can you imagine if you just paid $8,000 today and your home had full energy and power for 50 years?
Right.
Wow.
These things are coming out.
That is awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Well, thank you so much, Eric, for joining us. And for my audience, make sure you go to the Rice Report on Rumble and subscribe to Eric's show, because we love Eric. And I can tell you that Eric is a man of integrity. He loves the Lord above everything else. He puts the Lord first before anything, money, politics. And we just appreciate you, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Well, God bless you guys. Thanks for having me tonight.
All
Hope
right.
it was fun. Hope it was fun.
Yes.
It was.
See you, folks.
Take care. Yeah. Thanks, brother. That was a
Thank
great
you.
show.
That was fun. We were all over the place.